Welcome to the Cool Wholesaling Podcast. I'm Jasper Cool here with my dad, Mark Cool. And on this podcast, we share real world insights, tools, and strategies to help you succeed in real estate investing. So each week, you get perspectives from our two real estate investing businesses, what it's like to be in the trenches day to day doing deals and building our team. So we cover wholesaling houses and vacant land, building a real estate business with virtual assistants, doing this remotely, and more. So today we're going to be going over comping deals, and specifically I'm going to be going over houses and my dad's going to be going over land, and just basically going over how to evaluate properties and how to come up with your offers. Because that's a question I think both of us get a lot online is how to actually do that. And it's probably the most important part of the business. So hopefully you'll enjoy this episode, and we're going to cover that. We're also going to share, as usual, our victories, challenges from the past week, and we're each going to go over a deal that we closed recently and just kind of dive into the numbers and the story and kind of how we got that done. So we can just jump right into it with the comping conversation. Do you want me to start it off? Do you want to jump in? How do you want to do it?
Sure, I'll do the land side of things. I made some
Okay,
notes here so I can talk about it a little bit.
sounds
Um,
good.
yeah, so we're just talking about how to calculate your offer, which, as Jasper said, is a question we get fairly often. And like Jasper said, it's very important to send the right offer. Otherwise, you either get contracts that are overpriced and you can't sell, or I guess that's the biggest drawback, right? You get contracts that are overpriced, you can't sell, and then you have to
Yeah,
go back to the seller and ask for a price reduction. They get mad at you. And also, you lose credibility with your buyers sometimes if you're sending them deals that are way overpriced and you do it more than once. Then the buyers are kind of like, oh, I don't want to deal with this person because they're just sending me
yeah.
overpriced deals all the time. So it's important on those two levels, and it's also super important for you to make money, right? Like I know in the early days for me, sometimes I would realize that I had priced something too high, and then I would accept, like, well, I'm going to make $2,000 on this. At least it's something. It's better than nothing, you know.
Hmm.
And I don't do that anymore. But you want to make a certain amount of profit on each deal. So that's really important too. The better you comp things, the better profit you can make, and then also you don't waste your time. You don't want to be
Hmm.
wasting your time with people that you're not going to be able to make a profitable transaction with. And it's not always going to be the right deal, and it's not always going to be the right timing for a deal. So anyway, so I broke it down into tools and then just the process. For tools for comping, I would say for free tools, Zillow is really good. Jasper, I know you use that for houses a lot, but I've been using it more and more for land because you can just jump on there and you can filter by land. You can look at sold. If you're in an urban area, you will usually see a fair number of sold vacant lots there. In a rural area, not always as much, but that's often true for any platform you're trying to comp on. Like we also use PropStream, which is a paid platform. Um, we use investor base a little bit because you can see what builders paid for a lot in an area. And that's also a subscription platform. But another free one is Propwire, where you can go on and look at comps and recently solds. So for free
Hmm.
tools, I'd say um, the top ones we use are Zillow, Trulia. Also, sometimes is a little bit different, but I think Zillow owns that now, so I don't think it's that different. And but once in a while, you get different land information on Trulia, and then PropWire is free, and then we also use PropStream sometimes for comping. And by comping, I just mean pulling up properties that are similar to the one that you're looking at that have recently sold in the last 1 to 2 years and are within a close distance of the property. Five, preferably less than 2 miles. But then if you don't, I guess this is part of the process, right? It's like when you're searching for properties, you want to start with a small radius and a small time frame. Like if you can find multiple properties that have sold within the past year and within like 2 miles of your property, then those are going to be the best comps you can get. If you can't
Hmm.
find, 3 or 4 decent comps within those parameters, then you're probably going to have to go out in terms of distance from your property and maybe back in time, probably not more than 2 years because then the markets can really change. But um, it's sometimes you need to do that to get more information, try and get more information on what your property might be worth. So yeah, so those are the tools. That's kind of the process. Sometimes with land, you don't find any good comps, especially out in the country. There just aren't good comps. And so tax value is something you can use as a benchmark, but I wouldn't use it as a reliable thing all the time. I would say tax value can be a good benchmark maybe 80% of the time, but then there's a percentage in there where it's inflated or it hasn't been brought up, or they've valued the land based on a house or a mobile home that used to be there and it never dropped it back down to the house. So you can't always trust tax value. If you have nothing else to go on, you can use it as a benchmark, or you can use it in combination with the comps that you found as sort of a benchmark. I find that when I'm selling vacant land, that a lot of builders want to be around that tax value price or below. So it can be a benchmark for that too. Like if you're like, well, my comps say this, but tax value is this. I don't know. I'd go with the comps over tax value, and then I would say in terms of process, just err on the low side, throw out the outliers, the high and low outliers. So if you have 5 comps for a piece of land and the tax value is 20,000 and your comps are between 15 and 25,000, and then you have one comp that's 50,000, I would throw the 50,000 out probably and just go with the 3 or 4 comps that are around the tax value,
Yeah.
or really do some research on the outlier. Same thing for low ones. If you get a super low comp, like if your tax value is 20 and your comps are 15 to 25, and then you get a comp for like 3 or 5,000, I would throw that out. And often that property is a gift from a family member to another family member, or somebody bought it at a tax auction or something. So it's not really a valid comp for what people are going to pay. So for us, we're looking for, when you're doing houses, you're looking for estimated retail, what you think the house will be if all the repairs are done to it and it's fully fixed up. That's your value you're using to start with, and then you do your calculation from there. With us, we're more looking at what we think our buyers are going to pay. It's a little bit different than retail with a house to me. It's just like, and some of this comes with experience. Like we know what people are going to pay in a certain area, and then some of it just comes from the comps. Like it doesn't matter if, I don't know, maybe I'm losing the thread on this one, but we're just going for what we think people are going to pay, not as much what full retail would be. I'll stop on this thread because maybe I'm going down a wrong road.
No, that makes sense. That's what I do too. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess part of the reason I'm hesitating is because we're trying to do this for people who are starting out, and I have experience, so I know that like the comps might say 25 or 35, but I know that no buyer is going to pay more than 20 for a lot in this area. So that's
Yeah.
a little bit based on experience, and not as much on the comps. But I guess the point of it was that we're looking when we're setting our max allowable offer, we're going for what can we get for this property. And a lot of times the comps will dictate that, but then there's a little bit of judgment added in there, right? So if the comps are saying that, say I've got 4 comps for a property and they're 35, 32, 30, and 28, right? So then we're going to go with 28 or below as what we think we can sell it for, right? We're not going to go with 35 because then we're painting ourselves into a corner. And then we can look at negative and positive factors on that lot, like what might make us go up a little bit, or what might make us stay at our lowest or go down lower, right? So like negative factors for vacant land would be what I call nuisances or problem issues, like a cemetery or a busy highway nearby, or railroad tracks very close by, a factory, a landfill, things like that, even an electrical easement with the big lines running next door or through it. These things are going to make your property worth less. People are not going to want to live there, and builders are going to, if you're selling to a builder or an individual, people are going to want some money off for that, or they're just not going to want to touch it. So that would be a reason that I would offer less than whatever we determine our max offer is. And then high crime, flood zones, easements I mentioned, if you have the electrical easement running through a slope, if you have a really strong slope, if it's a very steep property, a lot of builders won't touch those at all. It makes it more expensive and more difficult to build on a sloped lot. And so if you're going to offer on that, you'd want to offer at a lower amount than you would if it was just a flat lot. You have to look at the status of a road. Like if you've got a vacant lot that's directly on a main road that's like a state maintained or a county maintained road, you're good. But if you have a road that's a gravel road, that might be a private road, or there might be I don't know, the owner of the property, one of the properties might have control of that road, stuff like that. You have to be a little bit careful. Also, that applies to what they call a flag lot. A flag lot would be like when you have the road going in and then the property is, behind another property. So it looks like a flag on the map. Those can be tricky, and you have to check and make sure that access is for the property that you're looking at, that the person in front doesn't control it. And also, builders, in my experience, tend to like those lots less because they don't have road frontage and they're just more work in general. So that's something that can be a little bit of a red flag. Um, and of course, the big one is landlocked lots, which if you're new to land, you might not be aware of this, but if a lot has no road access to it, if it's hemmed in by a bunch of other lots, that's a big red flag. We don't really even offer on landlocked lots anymore. We've sold a couple of them in the 5 years I've been in business. And generally, if we do them, they're bigger lots. They're like 5, 10, 15 acres. And then there's some indication that there might be an easement or an access to that lot. But if you just have a straight up landlocked lot and the seller doesn't have any knowledge of access to the lot, we pass on them. You can play with them. You can pay $500 for them and see if the neighbor will buy it from you. We've done that, but we used to just offer across the board $500 on every landlocked lot, and sometimes we'd get them. But even then, sometimes you can't sell it for a couple grand to a neighbor. So anyway, those are the red flags. I'd say the positives that you could add value for are if the lot's already cleared, if it's flat with no slope, if it already has a curb cut, and a driveway on it, there's a culvert, like a drain pipe when properties have a ditch. Like if those things are in place, that property's worth more. You can pay your top or maybe even a little bit above your top because that's less expense for a builder to deal with later. If there was a house or a mobile home there before, you're probably in pretty good shape because there's probably either water and sewer or taps for municipal, well and septic, or taps for municipal water and sewer. So those are things you can pay more for if those are in place. And also if a permit has already been approved, that would make that property worth more to us because we already know going in that that's not something we have to deal with or worry about, and it's easier to sell. So I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of perk because I think that's a whole separate issue. But so then if you do your comps and you look at all these factors and you adjust for negative or positive factors, then generally we're offering 60 to 80% of what we think our retail is or what we can get for it. And that will change based on the overall value of the property. Like, if you've got a property that's more expensive, like 100,000, you probably don't want to offer 60% on that because then you're offering 60,000 and there's a big gap. But if you've got a property that's worth retail 10,000, which believe it or not, in some areas you can pay that, that can be retail for a lot, and you offer 60%, that's 6,000. So it's a little bit different in terms of negotiation space or just even offending a seller because your gap is so big. So it's, 80% varies depending on overall value. And yeah, I think did I miss anything? That's our maximum offer amount is we say we think the property is worth 35,000, then and we've calculated in these factors, it's a good lot, it's flat, it doesn't have any major red flags, and we'd offer, maybe 70% of that. 7 times 3 is 21, 7 times 35. So 25 on a 35 lot, we'd probably offer 25, 28, as a starting point, just to get a baseline. And then we can negotiate from there, and we know we can go all the way up to 35. And again, these positive factors, if it already has a perk test or if it's flat or cleared, stuff like that, we know going up to 35 is not going to hurt us. If it's got some of the negative factors on it, then we might not want to go even all the way up there. We might want to, really try and stay at 32 or something like that. So, and we're going to work on actual assigning percentage discounts to all these factors this quarter, just to have more of a formulaic approach to this. And I can share that as we get it established. But and I wanted to mention one other trick for when you don't have comps. I forgot to mention is just a lot of times you can go by what's called the 10% rule, which is normally if you have home values in the area that are roughly 350,000, probably you're going to be able to sell lots for 35,000 ish. It's just like what builders will often pay is they want to be at 10% of their overall retail value for their lot. So you can use that to throw that in the mix with tax value and comps. And if you're low on comps, sometimes the 10% rule. And then with experience a little bit, you can go, we use a method called what can we get for this, and because we've done these markets so much, like the various counties we work in, we kind of know if we don't have any comps, what can we get for this? We can get 20K for this. Okay, we'll put it at, we'll put it at 20K, or we'll offer 15 or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
no, not 15. I'm sorry. That's the one big piece I didn't factor into it. So your maximum offer amount, I didn't factor in the profit that we want to make. So we take retail, we back out the profit we want to make, and then we take 60 to 80% of that. So I missed an entire step there. So if we feel like we can sell it for 30 and our minimum that we want to make on a vacant lot is 8,000, then our maximum offer is 22, and then we'd be offering 60 to 80% of that. My bad on that. Forgot to build in the profit there.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, our minimum profit on a vacant lot, our minimum assignment fee we want to make is 8. Preferably we want to make more than that. We often do make 10, 15, even 20,000 on a vacant lot. But if we have a 30K, which is what we think we can get for it, we take our 8,000 off of that, and we're at 22, and then we offer 60 to 80% of that. So that was a big point that I missed there.
Yeah.
But I guess that's a pretty decent rundown. Is there anything I missed, or any questions that came up for you when I was talking about that, Jasper?
I mean, I don't do land as much, so that sounded good to me. But I don't know if I have anything to add really.
Yeah, I mean, I could go in more into depth on comping, but I think that's a separate video. And I think I do have a couple of videos on my YouTube where I just go through using Zillow for comping, or using some of the other tools for comping
Mhm.
land. So without going into too much detail here, there are other videos available for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what I've got.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That was really helpful for me too to hear about your process for land. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh,
So let's hear about how you're doing your house offers.
yeah. So I mean, like you said, I guess I'll have just a disclaimer, but since we've both been doing the business for a while, it's like I don't really comp technically as much as I used to. Most of the time, I'm just knowing like what buyers are going to pay for a particular property. And another reason for that is because we really try to double down every area that we close a deal in. We just try to get as many more deals in that area as possible. And so a lot of times we'll get a property that I'm looking at, like it's not under contract yet, but I'm looking at comp and we've already sold one in the same neighborhood. So I know exactly what the buyer is going to pay for it. So that's obviously the best way to do it. And you can, like, if you don't know how to comp, you can reach out to buyers on investor base or otherwise and ask them what they're going to pay for it before you even get under contract. And that's a great way to reduce your risk when you're putting properties under contract. But just want to add that disclaimer, but we want to talk about comping and try to help people out. So there's 4 different strategies I would say that I use, or that you can use to comp. So first step would be like actually going through, detailed setting up, like either in your notes or Google Doc, and really going granular and comping property. Like you put your subject property up at the top, you put how many beds, how many baths, square footage, year built, all that stuff. And then you would just list anywhere from 3 to 6 comps that you find, and then you would find out your ARV and do it that way. So I'll go into that in a second. That would be the first method you can do. Second method would be just to look at as is sales and see, okay, what are buyers paying for properties as is in this specific neighborhood? And you would just backtrack from there. So you would not do the whole ARV formula. You would just look at what is the average of what buyers are paying for as is. And then you'd subtract out what you want to make. And then that would be your offer right there. So that's a really quick way to do it if you're in a bind and you need to get offers out quick. Number 3 would be using investor base. And that's something that's still kind of a work in progress, but something I've been using a lot more. And now if you go on investor base, you plug in your address, they'll show you like the analytics, and they'll show you what investors are paying for properties on average in that area. So it kind of just does that previous step I just mentioned for you, where you plug in this address and it says, okay, flippers are averaging this price in this neighborhood and landlords are averaging this price. And you could just take the 2 of those and kind of average those 2 out, and then you can kind of backtrack your profit and go from there. But I wouldn't recommend that just yet. I think that's still kind of a work in progress for them. But that is what we use to kind of double check our numbers and sometimes to increase our offers. Like, for example, if I comp a property and I come up with 100,000 as our max offer, And then I go on investor base and they're like, oh, investors are paying average 120. And I'm like, okay, I might not jump to 120, but I might jump to 110 and maybe have a better chance of getting a deal because of that data that I have with them. So I like using them too. And then the main thing actually that we use is just an instant offer calculator that I got from Jerry Norton. And it just makes it super, super easy. So we just plug in Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com, the average value of the property there. So Zestimate, and then whatever it's called on the other sites. Plug in those three numbers, and then we assign a percentage to it based on the value of those numbers. And then excuse me, it spits out an offer for us. So that's what I use mostly because I don't want to take the time to go through and comp a property when we don't even have it under contract and we don't even know if we're in the same ballpark. So that's what I use to just get offers out super quick. Now, if you're just getting started, I would recommend taking the time to learn how to comp. So I'll dive into that real quick. So you already touched on it mainly, but I'll touch on a couple of different things for houses. But basically, it's just making sure that properties are very similar to each other. So you want to make sure that if your property is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you're not comparing it to a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, for example. You want to do only 3 2s, or if you really have to, you could do like a 3 1.5 or a 4 2 maybe. But you really want to try to make the beds and baths exactly the same. Now, with square footage, you can play around with that a little bit. So you can probably go 20% in either direction. So if your property is 1,200, for example, you could go down to 1,000 and go up to 1,400 or even 1,500. It doesn't have to be exact, but I would say like plus or minus 20% around there in the square footage. And then for year built, I like to do plus or minus 10 years. So if your property is built in 1970, you could do 1960 to 1980. You don't want to compare a 1970 to a 2000s home. That's not going to be accurate. And so those are just kind of general rules. I'm sure most people have heard those before, but you just want to
price per square foot when you're doing the different square footages. Do you like look at price per square foot also?
No, I don't do that at all. But that is a good way to do it. It's just like I just don't, but that I'm trying to share like what would be helpful for other people. So that is a good strategy. But just sharing, I was just sharing like the criteria that you should go for before you even start comping. So plus or minus 10 years for the year built, plus or minus 20% for square footage. And then very important, if you have a 2-story home, just don't comp it to a 1-story home, just kind of simple stuff like that. If your home has a garage, don't comp it to a home without a garage, stuff like that. And then if you're going through the whole process, what we like to do is go through and look for ARV comps. So those are properties that are fully fixed up, and you can see that just by going on Zillow. Obviously, you can look at the pictures, and if it looks like it's been remodeled, it has new counters and all that good stuff, and professional photos, then it's probably a flip. And so then you can look at what that sold price was, and we like to find, like I said, anywhere from 3 to 6 comps, ideally. We start at 6 months usually, so sold within the last 6 months, and then if you have to, you can go up to 12 months, but the tighter the better. So 6 months and within a half mile ideally, and then if you have to go up to 1 mile in 12 months, that's fine. But you want to just try to find 3 to 6 comps that were flipped, so you can find the rough ARV number, and then you just take the average of those comps, and then you want to write that number down. Like you want to have a Google Doc open or something while you're doing this, so you can keep track of everything. So then you'll write down the ARV. And then what you do is you'll do the exact same thing for as-is comps. And so then what you're going to do, keep all the same filters, what you just used to find the ARV. And then you can typically go on Zillow and just sort price from low to high. That will usually show you like the comps that were sold as is. And typically when you're looking at those, they're either going to have no pictures because they were sold like off market, or they're going to have some pictures and you're going to be able to see that they were sold in as-is condition where, nothing was updated. You might have like junk in the house or something, for example. So then you're going to want to do the same thing, find 3 to 6 comps that are as-is comps, and then you're going to want to take the average of that and compare it to your ARV, and then you divide the two. So if you have an as-is value of 100,000, for example, and on average, and your ARV is 200,000, for example, then that tells you in that neighborhood, flippers are averaging 50% of ARV when they're buying a property. So then all you have to do from there is subtract out your profit. Typically, you can take 10% or 20% additional for your profit, just depending on how much you want to make. And so let's say 10%, for example. Now you would know that flippers are paying 50% in my example I just gave. You're going to subtract another 10 for your profit. So now you're at 40% of ARV, and that would be your number. So if ARV is 200,000, for example, 40%, shoot, I don't know that math off the top of my head, but that would be your, let me pull it up. That would be 80,000, and that would be your max allowable offer. So in that example, and like you said, when you come up with that max allowable offer, you don't want to just shoot straight for it. You want to start typically we try to start like 80 to 85% of that when we're negotiating. So again, I don't know that math off the top of my head, but we probably start at like 70,000 or a little bit less for our initial offer, and then that gives us room to come up. And yeah, so that's kind of like the long process of doing it. And I would recommend you practice doing it that way for at least a few months until you get comfortable comping. And then once you get more comfortable, you can just kind of skip the ARV step and just focus on the as is step, because that's the most important, is to know what buyers are paying as is in the current market. The ARV is less important because typically those properties, are obviously already sold. And when the buyer flips a property in 6 more months from now, the market's probably going to be a bit different. So what you really want to focus on is the as is sales that are most recent to you, and that'll tell you kind of the story of what buyers are paying. So that's kind of the long way to do it. And yeah, I guess that's about it. But does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. I like that method of just like searching by sales price and low to high and then finding the as is right there.
Yeah,
That's a cool thing, cool trick for Zillow that I haven't really tried. Um, One of the things, maybe you already do this too, but like you can go into Zillow and find a flip that's obviously a flip, and then you can scroll down in the history in Zillow and see what they paid for it too.
yeah,
You can do it that way. I guess that's the same thing. You're just doing going after it a different way. I've always done it
exactly.
the other way. It
Yeah,
sounds like my way is harder because you're going into the listing and then you're scrolling down and you're seeing the price history and then you see what they paid for it. But if you just search for as is, then you're good. We use that for land too. Just going back to land is like if you have a new build, you can try and find new builds on Zillow, or if you are doing Zillow for comping and you see new builds there, you can scroll through to the price history and see what they paid for the lot.
yeah.
Like if the new build sold for 300,000, you can just scroll down and then you see the 40,000 sale was the lot back then. So anyway, no, I think that's you illustrated it really clearly. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point though. You can definitely do it that way. And that's an even easier way to do it. Sometimes it's just a bit faster to do it all at once, where you do the ARV first and then the as is ones. But that's a great point. And then I will add too, for that, what you just shared, you can also, if you don't find any comps sold, ideally you want to go with solds, but if you don't find any, you can go to pending, and on Zillow you can easily filter. You just go to for sale instead of sold. So there's a filter on Zillow. You just click for sale, and then you go over to more filters, and you click. You have to check this box, and it says pending, and there's another box for under contract, and that'll show you the listings that are pending and under contract. And then what you can do is look at all the flips that are currently pending. Now, obviously, some deals are going to fall out, but you can see, you click on that pending thing, see what price it's pending for, and then you can do the exact thing you just said and just scroll down and see what they bought it for. That's if you don't see any solds. You can do that. So that's another good tip.
Yeah, and just for people who are just starting out, Zillow has really gotten a lot better for comping lately. And I we have PropStream, we have Investor Base, we use Propwire sometimes, but I go to Zillow first most of the time now because I can generally get all the information I need for land
Yeah.
or houses right there, and that's a free tool. So just want to emphasize free tools here as much as we can, because Investor Base costs whatever it costs, $200 a month, and it's a great tool. But if you're starting out and you don't want to incur, monthly subscription fees, Zillow will do a lot for you.
Yeah.
You don't really need anything else. So that's great to illustrate that using that free tool.
Yeah, and that's what I still use to this day. So Zillow's awesome.
Well, one other question from what you shared is the Jerry Norton tool, is that free or is that something you got from a mastermind or something?
Yeah, he just posted a free YouTube video. I mean, I could just share it with you and you can post it, but we could also link it to his video if we want to
Okay.
shout him
Yeah,
out.
because Jerry Norton, he's a very successful real estate investor, and he created Propwire, which is a competitor to PropStream, but he also has a comping tool that's a calculator, and you can, as Jasper said, throw the comps in there, and it'll spit out your offer number for you, right?
Yeah.
So pretty cool. And I just wanted to see if that was free. So yeah, you can probably just look up Jerry Norton comping tool on YouTube or something and find it. But we'll see if we
Yeah.
can post it in the notes for this episode too.
Yeah, definitely. He had a whole video breaking it down. And so that's a really good tool to use. Now, I just downloaded it from him and then I edited it like through practice. And so I think every market's going to be a bit different. I think he gave a good general like percentage and stuff for his thing. One thing I noticed when using that, which I think is why I recommended it for beginners, is that the offers were coming in low. And I think it's always better to come in low than high. And so that's why I recommend that tool, because the offers are coming in a bit too low. And so I edited the percentages for me so we could be a bit more, competitive. But I
Yeah.
would always recommend as a beginner, if you're unsure, just go low. Just discount additional 10% or something if you're unsure about your numbers, because it's always, I mean, you're never going to get in trouble locking up a property too low. You only get in trouble, putting it under contract too high. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I recommend that tool, because I did notice that the offers are kind of conservative. So yeah, only other thing I wanted to mention, because you mentioned a lot of this for land, but for houses, for like taking an additional discount, I would say if it's near like a commercial, kind of same as land, but if it's near a commercial thing, like maybe a mobile home park, or if it's like on a busy street next to like a car wash and a bunch of other commercial properties, you want to take an additional discount for that, maybe 5 to 10%. If it's in a flood zone, you want to take additional discount for that. If it's, like I said, on a main road, on a double yellow road, you want to take additional discount there. If it's, I don't know if you would take additional discount, but some buyers don't like septic and well. So if your property is not on city utilities, you could take a small discount for that. And then other things, you could kind of increase your offer a bit. If the property is built like more recently, anything above 1990, it kind of opens up your buyer's pool a lot. So anything newer than 1990, if it has a garage, that's a bonus. If it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath or better, like 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 3.5, 4.2, 4.3, stuff like that. A lot more buyers are looking for stuff like that because it's great for flips and for rentals. So you have a bigger buyer pool. So those are just some things that you can use to increase your offer versus decrease your offer based on the surrounding stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Good points. Yeah.
Um,
Nice.
but yeah, so hopefully that was helpful. If you guys like that, or if you have any other questions on either the land or the houses, definitely just drop it in the comments and we can touch on it more in future episodes. But now we want to shift gears to deal breakdown and just kind of business review from the past week. So do you have a deal you want to break down?
Uh, we didn't close anything last week.
Oh,
I
that's
think we had
okay. Do you want to break down a contract story or anything?
we had 2 or 3 that we were scheduled to close, and, this is how real estate goes. Sometimes
Yeah.
we've talked about this many times, but I think, April's gonna be really great for us. I think there's one that we have an outside chance of closing on Monday, but we're waiting on a payoff from a lender, so I'm not holding my breath on that one. Um, but yeah, I guess I can share a win that I shared with you offline, which is that we're at 15 contracts for the month, so that
That's
feels like it's setting
amazing.
us up for a really good April.
Yeah.
If I look at this last week, what was the date of this last week? We started with the 24th this week. So this week we got one, two, three, 4 contracts this week. So we've been averaging, basically 4 contracts a week for all of March after a really slow January and February. So that's a big victory. And I guess what we did was we doubled down. How did we get there? We doubled down on our follow up. I jumped in to support our acquisitions manager slash lead manager and had her pass a lot of closing calls to me. I followed up with a bunch of sellers. We got a little bit lucky. Some contracts came in that we sort of had out there that we've been talking to people about, and finally they signed or finally they were ready to go. Um, yeah, so a variety of factors, but I think it was just doubling down on our effort. Also, um, Krisa from my team, who's a rock star, she was doing sort of guerrilla micro campaigns like you've described, Jasper. She was just like, okay, well, we're doing well in this area. She just like pulled all the data in that area and started either having somebody on our team call them, or she was calling them and just trying to get people. And we ended up getting 1 or 2 contracts that way, just from like rolling up your sleeves and going into areas that we knew we could sell deals in. So another victory we had this week is that one of the contracts we got, uh, one of my dispo guy, Alistair, put on the Slack thread. This is a record for our company. We sold this in 18 minutes. So,
That's
so
awesome.
like I knew that we had a buyer and I had already talked to him and I knew what he would pay. And then we got the contract and I reached out to him on text and I was like, hey, do you want this? He was like, yeah, I'm good with that price. And it was 18 minutes from the time we got the contract. So
That's
that's,
great.
but I guess the lesson there is just like the idea of making a deal and knowing your buyer pool and, you know, properties and what buyers will pay and trying to put the pieces together like a puzzle and just like we I guess I could tell this story a little bit. This was a seller that we had. This will be my deal story. This was one of these areas that's been hot for us, and we have a VIP buyer who really wants vacant lots in this area. So we'd been trying to market there, and we had this guy, and he made a verbal agreement with our acquisitions manager, and this was back in like November, December, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not looking at my Podio, but it was no, it was before December. It was probably October or November. He was like, "Yeah, I'm good to go at that price." And then she's like, "Great," and she sent him the contract, and then he ghosted, completely ghosted. And so it's been like a three. Well, no, it's been like a 4-month follow up with this guy, just like following up with him, calling him, texting him, all this stuff. Like, "Hey, you ready to do a deal? We're definitely interested in this lot, et cetera, et cetera." And the follow up went on for like 3 months with nothing back, nothing back, nothing back. And then probably 3 weeks ago, she was like, "Hey, this guy answered me. He responded to me, and but he wants more than we were gonna give him." And I was like, "Oh man, he wanted quite a bit more than we were gonna give him." And so then I reached out to this buyer we have in the area, and I was like, "Hey, would you be interested in this property? And what would you pay for it?" And he was like, "Definitely. And this is what I would pay. I'd pay a little bit more." Because he was actually on the hook. He was interested in it the first time when because I'll reach out to people before we even have something on their contract and be like, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" Just to get an idea of price and interest. And so he was ready to go back then, and then the guy didn't sign. So anyway, he was okay with the same property at an increased price. He told me what the most he'd pay was. Then I got on the phone with the seller, and he was a little bit elusive and a little bit, like, "I got another offer, blah blah blah, this and that." And I was just like, I just kept going. I'm like, "Dude, what do we need to do to make this work today? What do we need to do to lock this down?" And I built in some rapport building, just like letting him know that I'm also in North Carolina, and we just kind of built a little bit of rapport, and he agreed to a price with me. But then he was an old school guy who wanted to do everything on paper and use his attorney to review everything. So it was like that kind of process where it's still a nail biter because I didn't feel like the relationship was solidified 100%. And also, this guy had already backed out on us once. So, but what I did was, and I talked with my new acquisitions guy about this week, is I'll do stuff like send people a letter, like a handwritten letter, things like that. And so because I knew this guy was old school, and because I really wanted this deal because I knew it was going to be a slam dunk. Well, no, nothing's a slam dunk, but I knew we had a buyer lined up, and I know he was talking about another buyer and he'd been flaky in the past. So what I did is I printed out the contract in my office. I put it in a 9 by 12 envelope, and I hand wrote a letter like, "Hey seller, this is the contract we agreed to, blah blah blah, this and that." I said a couple of things in there. Let me know about showing it to your lawyer. Da da da. Here's our lawyer, and I just sent him a handwritten letter with my business card, paper business card, in an envelope, and I FedExed that to him, so he got it within a couple of days. And I did it for speed. I did it for a personal touch and for catering to somebody who is an old school personality who does not do internet, does not do. I was like, "Can we just send this to you for e-sign?" "Oh no, I don't do that." Just like that kind of personality. People don't trust anything that comes through email. They don't trust any e-signature, any of that stuff. They want old school. So anyway, and then I followed up with him. "Hey, did you get it?" "Yeah, I got it." "Do you know when you're going to be able to show it to your attorney?" "It'll be this week." "Okay, let me know." And this was on text. And then he did. He showed it to his attorney, and his attorney sent it to our attorney, fully signed and everything, and ready to go. And so then we got the message from our closing attorney, "Hey, I just got this in the mail," or "I got this overnight from this attorney," and we're like, "Great." And then we reached out to the buyer, and "Yes, I'm in." Signed the contract, boom. So that's how it worked. But I also do stuff like that. This is just, as long as we're going, this can be in the tips section, but I still have envelopes in my office that are like bright pink, bright fluorescent green, purple, like orange, and I send these to people once in a while. And I'm going to send one this week because I have this guy who I had a really good conversation with, and then he ghosted. Right, so it's a strategy of just like send a little personal note. "Hi, had a great conversation with you a couple weeks ago. Just definitely interested in this piece of land. Please give me a call so we can chat," and put my phone number and handwrite and put my business card in there. It has worked for me multiple times. So I just want to throw out, like, having that old school touch sometimes, especially if people are older, like over 60 or over 70, it can really, really help secure a deal when other wholesalers that you're competing with might not do that type of thing. So
Yeah,
that's that's my tip of the day. And that's my story. And I'll leave it at that.
I love that. That's awesome. That's great advice too. So
Thanks.
thank you for sharing that.
And it
Really
does
excited
work.
to
Like
hear
I
about
said,
your.
I've had sellers call me up on the phone. Hey, got your letter, I'm giving you a call. I'm like, awesome. But it does work. So
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And we have sellers like that all the time too. It's just like they don't want to do it on DocuSign. They don't they don't trust it at all. So we send them a letter. We send someone out there with the paperwork. So
yeah.
that's a great advice. Awesome. Well, for me, let's see. I guess I share victories and challenges for this week. So one challenge I had was my property I had sold. They inspected it. I had termite issues, so I had to
Oh man.
pay a bunch of money to get that fixed. So that's a bummer. But we're still making money on it. Just not a home run that I had hoped for. And so I don't know, kind of had second thoughts about buying that one, but it's too late now. We're still gonna close it next month, so that's good.
So you bought it and then you found out about the termite damage?
Yeah, I just bought it and fixed it up and put it on the market, and then I didn't know about the termites, but that's okay. So anyways, I definitely do want to buy more properties, but I guess next time I'll get it inspected myself before closing, just so I know. But yeah, that was that. And then had another challenge slash victory. So with the Google PPC, just giving everyone an update. Last week I was very disappointed and $20,000 in the hole and nothing to show for it. And this week we're now $21,000 in the hole. And we did get 2 contracts this week. So that was super
From
exciting.
PPC?
Yeah, that was super exciting to get 2 contracts from PPC. But then we get a contract on Friday morning. It was a good deal. PPC lead came in on Thursday and they were super ready to sell, super motivated. And so anyways, we same thing. They didn't want to do it on e-sign. So we sent someone out Friday morning. She signed the contract and literally like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours later, she's like, "Oh, I'm terminating the contract." We're like, "Oh, awesome." And so reached out to these people, and I don't know if this is true or if they were just lying to me about this, but they said that while they were there meeting with our guy Jonathan, who we sent out, they said that there was a black truck driving back and forth. And as soon as Jonathan pulled out, this black truck pulls in and it's a real estate agent. And they're like, "What did you just sign for?" "Oh, they're scamming you. I'll list your property for this." And so I don't know if that's true, but if that is,
Wow.
that is just insane to me to think about. And it's why, I don't personally like real estate agents at all. But that is just insane. And I would believe it because I've had that thing happen to me before many times. So anyways, if you are a real estate agent, just don't do that. There's plenty of other ways to get deals, and you can make a lot more money working with wholesalers.
How would they know to follow? How would they know to follow Jonathan? They'd have to have insider information to know that you were dealing with these people, right?
I mean, maybe, or they're just a realtor who's just in the area. It's a small town, and maybe they just saw someone. I think they were probably outside, like signing a contract, on the hood of a car, like you do. And so they probably saw that and it just circled like vultures. So that's impressive. Shout out to that real estate agent. But yeah, so that
I
was a bummer.
shared that I just almost lost a deal based on the same thing a couple of weeks ago, where
Yeah,
the broker was like, "Oh, I'll list it for way more than that," and
yeah.
then I had to pay the seller more to get the deal to close.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean that was a bummer and it just kind of further solidified. So I'm most likely going to cancel PPC. I really wanted to try to make some money off of it because like I said, I've made absolutely nothing. And what I have noticed though, which I wanted to share with everyone because I do want to be transparent and update people, is that I don't think and I just sharing this from my experience because a lot of people are very successful with it, and that's why I tried it because whoever would not be named, the guy that we like to look up to, he just shares very, very candidly that it's like if you say something, for example, if you say PPC doesn't work, that's just not true because there's companies that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per day because it works that well. And
Yeah.
so it definitely works. I just noticed from the leads that I've gotten, and it could be an issue with the agency I'm working with, who knows, but the leads that I've gotten, I've noticed it seems like they're very, very motivated to sell. And what I've noticed in my business is that when you get a lead like that, it's actually not a good lead in my business. Because when people are very distressed or desperate or motivated to sell, they will do anything to sell that property, even signing with a realtor 10 minutes later because they offer them more money, right? And so what I've noticed is that the best deals that we get are people who don't need to sell, but they just want to sell. And they might have gotten our text message and be like, oh, maybe I will sell that property. And then they weren't even thinking about it before, but they're interested to sell and they don't need the money. That's when we get the best deals in my business. And so that's why I'm still probably going to cancel PPC, because these leads have been nothing but a headache for us. We've gotten now 5 contracts. None of them have closed, and all of them have been a huge headache to deal with. And 2 of them have completely tried to back out like immediately after signing the contract. And 2 of them have ghosted us. And another one we got this week, maybe we'll close it. We'll see. But it's just been very difficult to deal with these sellers. And I've noticed a similar thing from the other companies I work with that are pay per lead, where we closed a couple deals this year with those people, and all 3 of the sellers that we tried to close with were frustrating to deal with, tried to back out on us, and tried to back out before closing after we had already spent thousands of dollars trying to help them, sell their property. So anyways, that was just my kind of complaining, but also just noticing that sometimes the more motivated leads that everyone wants are not always better, because when someone's in that mental headspace, they might do anything, which means going back on their word with you. So I understand
That's kind of,
I don't want to talk down on those people, because I understand that. I've been in positions like that, and I totally understand. They want to get the most for their property, but those aren't really the type of people I want to deal with. And I'd rather deal with people that are, gonna hold true to their word, and maybe don't necessarily need this money to survive. Maybe just it can be an easier process for us when they don't. So, anyways, but what were you gonna say?
no, it's a great point about the motivation. All I was going to say is, for the person you described who backed out, that it's kind of stupid for them to go to a realtor. And this is what I would, you probably already tried this tack with them, but it's like, there's no guarantee with a realtor you're going to sell that at all. And you're going to pay a commission, and it could go 3 or 6 months before you get your money, even if it does sell. So like, if they're desperate and motivated, it seems like they should be going with the cash offer right away. But it's a great point. It is a great point. And we do a similar thing in land too, right? Where our best sellers are the out of state sellers, the people who live in California and have a piece of property in North Carolina that was left to them by their aunt, and they don't really care, and they already have plenty of money. And they're, like, a lot of people who are best sellers, like you said, they have plenty of money. They don't need the money. They're not like, I've got to get this cash so I can have this surgery or whatever it is, because you've dealt with those people, right? It's like, oh, I've got all these doctor bills, or, they're just like, I'd rather have a little bit of cash and not have to think about that thing anymore and pay taxes on it or maintain it or whatever. So
Yeah, exactly.
great point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And on this one, I mean, I'll just share real quick for people, because I've heard this many times, but maybe other people haven't. And so they told me this realtor story. I called them up, and they switched their story like 5 times. So first thing, it was a realtor, and I explained to them, if they're offering you 80,000, which we are under contract for 60, they offered them 80. I was like, okay, they're offering you 80. These are all the things that are wrong with your house right now. I wasn't trying to be mean, but I was just like, these are all the things that they're going to require you to repair. This is how much that's likely going to cost you. Not only that, but this property was a bit of a hoarder house. And I was like, hey, working with us, you don't have to touch a thing. We'll handle all that stuff. You leave it behind, you move on to your new place. Also told them, we've already seen the property. We're good to go. We're locked in at that price. This realtor is going to obviously list the property, going to shop it around to a bunch of different buyers who are going to walk through your house and probably offer you closer to what we offered you, and all that stuff. And so then they changed their story and said that a family member is going to help them. In this case, she had back taxes, and so she really needed to pay those off, or they were going to, it was going to go to tax sale. And so they were like, oh, well, no, it's not even that. Like, our sister's going to come in and pay off the back taxes and fix up the house, and we're just going to keep it in the family. And I told them point blank, because, it's frustrating for me after dealing with this so many times when people say that, because unfortunately, it's usually not true. And I don't like
I've
to
heard
assume.
keep it in the family many times.
Yeah.
Keep it in the family. It's a big one.
And
We're going to
so,
keep it in the family. We're just going to keep it in the family.
and so, I mean, if you hear that, we're just sharing that, because if you hear that, I don't want to, generalize, but it's likely a lie. And so I told the person who I was speaking with, which unfortunately the seller wouldn't even speak to me. She passed me to her brother. And so he's like, type A personality, screaming at me and stuff. And I calmed him down. And I just told him point blank, I was like, sir, you understand from my perspective how this could sound fishy, when just 5 minutes ago you told me you were selling to a realtor for 80, and now you're telling me your sister's going to pay off the taxes. Like, do you understand how that sounds weird from my perspective? And he said literally, he was like, "Oh yeah, I guess a good guy is good." And I was just like, dude, I mean, this is how I left it with him. But I was like, dude, I told him point blank, I was like, I've heard this story many times. I've been in business for a while, and usually it's just not the case. So can you just shoot me straight here, what's actually going on? And he dug his heels in and he said that the sister thing was true. And so I was like, okay, I respect that. And I hope you guys do keep it in the family. Just letting if that doesn't work out, your sister doesn't come up with the money fast enough, just let us know. We're still here. We're still under contract, and we're still ready to follow through on our agreement. And so that's why I left it with him. But I expect a call back from those people in a few weeks because we did file a memorandum, and I'm sure they'll notice that. So we'll see.
Well, memorandums don't always work. That's a problem.
Yeah, but yeah, they'll either sell it without my memorandum or they'll call me back in a few weeks. So we'll see. But that was my
Sounds like they just got another offer from another wholesaler, really.
yeah, yeah, probably. Uh, but yeah, so that was that. And then I don't know, I kind of went long on that, but I could share a deal story if we want to.
Yeah, I'd say go for it. I think deal stories are good. I like them.
Okay. Well, same as you, I didn't close anything this week. I had everything delayed to next week and weeks beyond. So we'll see. But this one that is actually supposed to close on Monday, I wanted to share a story of because it was kind of an interesting deal. And so, yeah, I'll just jump into it. So again, we haven't closed it yet, but we're hoping to close on Monday. Seller did sign on Friday. And so hopefully look at the docs Monday and we can close everything. But this was an interesting one. So it came to us from a referral, which was awesome because we got a seller referral from 2023 when we initially bought his wife's house. She referred us now to her husband, who inherited this property from his late mother. And she just, she was really pleased with the way that we worked with her. And so she referred him to us. And
Nice.
he had a bunch of other, investors that he had already reached out to, but she was like, the wife was really selling them for us, which was really sweet.
That's great.
And so he went with our offer, even though it was a bit lower than other offers that he would get. And this was a new market for me, but because it was a referral, I was like, I really want to try to, make it work, do right by the seller, and hopefully maybe they'll refer us another property in the future. So we put it under contract and we marketed out to our buyers, and no surprise there, we didn't really didn't really have any traction. I tried to use investor base and I did get some, good connections there, but just wasn't getting any offers. And so we just decided that we were going to list the property because it was already vacant and, sellers already signed off on that. So we just let them know we're going to list it. We listed on the market and still was kind of getting crickets there, but we ended up after a few weeks, I think it took 2 or 3 weeks on market to finally get some offers coming in. And I got this offer from this one guy. He was all cash, and he was local there, and so we agreed to his offer. And then that's when I realized that he didn't have an email. And so I've dealt with that with sellers plenty of times, but I've never dealt with a buyer not having an email. And so that was very interesting to me. But he's just one of those guys, like he's just an old school guy. He has a landscaping business and he just works with his hands and he just doesn't do computers. He's just kind of like
Yeah.
the sellers that we deal with. And so what we did is because he was in Laurinburg, and I didn't necessarily want to send a mobile notary all the way out there. And he would need to wire in the earnest money anyway. So what we did is we had him go to the bank and give me a call, and he was on like basically speakerphone with me and him and his banker. And she gave me her email. And what I did is I sent the DocuSign to her email as well as the wiring instructions, and she just did it all right there. So that was pretty cool. So basically, she just printed out the contract I sent her, had him sign it, and had him wire the money right there. And then she sent it all back to me. So that was pretty cool. And then since then, the buyer's been super sweet to work with. He's a super sweet guy. He just one of those people who just calls me like every couple of days just to talk. It's just even though we're not closing, so it's kind of fun. But yeah, so then we ran into another issue though when we put it in escrow. Like I said, it was inherited, and so there were some title issues to clear up. There were a couple of judgments and stuff. But then what was the biggest issue, or we thought was going to be the biggest issue, was this guy's brother had a bunch of I don't know the word. I guess it's just judgments, but had a bunch of stuff from like being a felon, and like had a
Oh
bunch of
wow.
what's it called, like when he missed bail or something. Like he had a bunch of those things, and
Oh yeah.
and so it was a bunch of things from the court, like judgments against him.
Bond, right? A bail bond.
Yeah. So he had a bunch of things from the court against him, and it was amounting to more than our price because this is in Laurinburg. It's not a very expensive property, and it's not a huge profit for us. So like, there really wasn't much room to make this work. So I was like, oh man, this might be a dead deal. Anyways, long story short, the closing attorney that we're working with, shout out to them for doing all this legwork for us. But this is a very small county. It's Scotland County, North Carolina, very small county, and they didn't have email either. And so the closing attorney is having to call them to confirm these judgments. And we got the ID from the seller's brother, who these were against, to like confirm if the ID matches up and the social security number. So we got his ID and social security number. And then she was calling this county, and she couldn't email them, obviously. So she was waiting for them to call back. And then she figures out that there are multiple people with his same name, and it actually wasn't against him. So it was awesome. But there was another dude with the same, or not another guy. It was like 3 to 5 more people with the same exact name. His name was just Christopher, so I guess it's a common name, but same exact first name and last name. And so we found out by confirming the social security number that those judgments were against a different Christopher. And anyways, so then it was just on to closing from there. And so now we're hoping to close on Monday. But that was just so interesting, all the things that we went through on this one. So yeah, that's my story, and hopefully we'll close it Monday, and I think this one will make about 5,000 on. So that's a win, and also hopefully we'll get maybe a good review or maybe a referral from these sellers again in the future. So
that's a relief that you found that. It's funny that you say that, because we had a similar deal where there were judgments and there were different people with the same name, and we were trying
yeah.
to sort it out. We still never sorted it out. We couldn't get it
Oh
figured out. I don't
man.
know which county it was in, but I think there were other issues with that deal that caused it to crash. But we had that, but it wasn't criminal stuff. It was other judgments like mechanics liens and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. That was my first time like dealing with that exact scenario. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, that's my deal story. But from there we like to move into tips, tools, and strategies. Do you have any like softwares or tools or anything you want to share?
Uh, no, I don't have anything new that we've been using. We're still getting to know Just Call. Another thing I learned in Just Call this week, because we brought on a new acquisitions guy, which is also a victory that I didn't share, is that we have a new guy on our team this week who is doing a great job. I mean, it's his first week. We did some training and stuff, but he's jumped in and making calls with sellers, and he's acquisitions closer and somebody I've been looking for a while. And I'm pretty excited about his potential future with the company and what it's going to mean for our business. So anyway, one of the things I learned while we were getting him set up is that with Just Call, which is our business calling system integrated with our CRM Podio, you can do pre-made quick replies for SMS. And so it's very similar to Launch Control Jasper or Smarter Contact. You can just, instead of typing an SMS every time you don't get a seller on the phone and composing a new message, you can have quick ones that you drop in there. So that's pretty cool. And then also the same thing with voicemail. You can have pre-made voicemails and drop them in. So like, hey, just trying to reach, it's Mark trying to reach you about the lot in whatever, or just trying to reach you. I guess you have to make it generic. It's Mark trying to reach you about the vacant lot. Give me a call. But you can
Yeah.
drop that in every time you make a call and don't get somebody. And you can also drop in text. So I thought that was a cool feature that I wasn't aware of before, the quick replies for text on that platform. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think I have anything new right now. So that's all I've got.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Uh, well, for me,
Got any tools or anything?
yeah, I found out about this new company called, I think it's called My Web Sharks. I have to double check. But I'll text it to you after this. I think it's called My Web Sharks. But either way, it's a new paper lead company I heard about from Brent Daniels. And so I haven't tried them out, but I'm thinking about giving them a shot. And they charge $100 per lead. So that's a little bit cheaper than some other companies. And they just basically sell you a package up front. So that's how it's different than other companies. So you have to pay, for a certain number of leads up front. And then they'll send them to you, and you can still refund them if they're not, good leads, or if they're listed on the market, for example. So anyways, that's just a tool, but like I said, I haven't tried them yet. I probably will try them next week or sometime in the next month and give everyone an update then. Do want to update people because I think I shared last week about putting in AI receptionist. I did try it. I was excited about it, and I don't think it's ready just yet. So I turned that off. But I do like the software I use. It's called My AI Front Desk. It's very easy to use, very user friendly. I really like it because you don't have to talk to people like to sign up. I hate the people that do the song and dance where you have to do a demo and all this stuff
Yeah, I know.
to sign up. Especially as a software company, you should make your software simple enough to where you don't have to do that. Anyways, that's just my rant, but I really like it because it's not like that. So I was able to just log in, sign up. A really cool thing is you type in your domain name for your website, and they pull an FAQ from that themselves using AI. So you already
Nice.
have like you can obviously fill in more knowledge base for it, but they already have like a general idea of what your business does, and they already put together this thing on like, okay, so if you're buying houses in North Carolina, you do this and this and this, and it's like pretty cool. So anyways, I tried it out. It's the issue for me is that I don't know what it's called. I think it's called latency, but it's like when a customer calls in and they speak to them, they're giving like good responses and it doesn't, their voices are pretty good. But if the customer cuts them off at any point in their thing, it throws off the whole thing. Like
Uh,
it just totally messes up everything. And so that's where it doesn't work is because if they're in the middle of a response and the customer cuts them off, they don't finish the response. They go into a whole new canned response. And I was like, oh man, that sounds totally robotic. Um,
yeah.
and so, and it's not even that because it's like, it's okay. I think it's okay if you were to call in and they're like, hey, this is AI assistant for blank company. How can I help you? I think that's okay. Like most people aren't going to care. But when they're kind of messing up the communication like that, I was like, okay, it's not there yet. So I get in my feedback and I turned it off. But I think maybe in a few months I'll try it again. So
How were you able to listen to the recordings of calls on the platform too? That's how you found this out?
yeah, so it's great because every time they speak to someone, they'll send you an email update and they're like, "This is a full transcript. Here's a call recording. I just spoke to this person, gives a phone number and everything like that." So you can see the transcript, you can listen to the call, and you can have them forward calls too. So that was working well. Where when someone calls in, I just gave it a rule. I was like, "Hey, if they mention any of these people by name, please transfer them to the appropriate phone number." And they were doing that great. So like someone would call in and they're like, "Hey, this is so and so." I just gave it a name. I think I named it Ashley or something. They're like, "Hey, this is Ashley provide home offer. How can I help you today?" And then they'd be like, "Hey, I'd like to speak to Mike, for example." And they're like, "Okay, no problem. Transferring you right now." And they transferred to Mike. And that was awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
but I can just do that with IVR, press a button and transfer. I don't need AI, but I did like that piece of it. But like I said, it was just a conversational is not quite there yet. So hopefully I'll find a better one or maybe they'll make some improvements. But it was pretty cool to experiment with. So it's getting closer for sure.
Yeah, we're going to try that with Just Call. It's on our second quarter list to do.
Yeah, so it's definitely getting closer. And also they can auto or not auto, but they can hold text conversations too. So I think that would be more beneficial because like anyone who's texting in, they can automatically reply to that. So I might play
Yeah,
around with that some more, but for right now, the voice stuff was just not up to par for me. So yeah, just wanted to share that with everyone in case people were thinking about trying that.
nice. Thanks for the update.
Yeah. All right. So now we'd like to go into audience questions and any feedback. So do we have any comments or questions we can address?
Let's see here. Let me jump on real quick. Uh, 5 days ago. That's as far back as we're going to go, right?
Yeah, like 5 to 7 probably.
Yeah. Well, you've got great info, guys. Thanks, Jasper. Jasper's your school is awesome. So somebody
Oh,
likes Jasper's school, and for anybody who's listening, Jasper has a SKOOL school where you have what free resources, Jasper, and tips, and what's on there.
yeah, pretty much just everything. I mean, I'll be transparent. I haven't put any work into it in a while. Just been focused on my business. But when I first set that up, it was in October last year, and I just dropped everything I could possibly think of. So, like the comping stuff we went over today, I was just reading off my school. I have a bunch of docs in there for comping. I have a video walkthrough of how to comp, and then I have how to fill out contracts and just anything A to Z. All the tools that I use, all the contracts I use, everything's in there. So,
Nice. Yeah. So if you're looking for some resources, just go to school, and is it Bright Home Offer there? I
no,
guess that's
it's called Remote Flippers. So if you just
okay.
search,
That's also in your link tree, right?
yeah,
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 and Jasper's link tree is posted in the description on this video, so you can find it there too.
yeah.
We've got some condolences for you, Jasper. Sorry to hear about the PPC stuff, man. That sucks. It's a learning lesson. This may
Yeah.
encourage you to do direct mail and kill it.
Yeah, definitely encourage me to do direct mail and or anything besides PVC, but thank you.
And then somebody asked, have you heard of my CRM SIM? So I don't know about that. I guess it's a CRM, my CRM SIM.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that. I mean, I could just look it up right now and see what it
Yeah,
is.
I haven't heard of that either.
It looks like it's an SMS plugin for Go High Level. So my dad and I, we both use Podio, so I haven't heard of that, but it looks like it's a plugin for Go High Level, which is another CRM I've heard of. But for right now, I'm sticking with Podio, even with the issues that we've had lately. But yeah.
Yeah, we spent a bunch of time and money with the developer rebuilding or revamping or improving our Podio, so we're staying there for a little while too.
Yeah.
But thanks for the tip. And then we've got ever experiment with a blank offer, aka a name your price letter. So this is in response to the direct mail episode we did last week. I've never done that. A blank offer. I actually haven't had that offered to me by our direct mail companies. It's a cool idea because then somebody can fill in the offer, the amount that they want, and then you have their price right away. We do
Yeah.
that with on our website. We have a web form, for if a seller is directed to our website and they're interested in selling a property, we do have that as a question, like what's your asking price. So I guess that's a similar thing. But no, I've never sent mail out with a blank for somebody to fill in and say, name your price. That's kind of a fun concept.
I like
And you,
that. Yeah.
yeah. What else? I know you mentioned assessed value, but generally speaking, what's the percentage of market value you typically offer? And yeah, we just went over this in this episode, but once we determine market value, we're offering 60 to 80%. I think, Jasper, you can speak to houses more. You did speak to it, but you can reiterate if you want.
Yeah, we're anywhere. It just depends on the price. So the lower the price, the lower the percentage for us. And so if it's a higher price property, then we're going to offer a higher percentage, if that makes sense. So typically, like for properties, I mean, I'll just share with you for properties that are 150K or lower, we're offering about 60%. 150 to 250, 65, 250, 350, 70, and we just jump up five basically every 100K. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's also,
Yeah.
if you guys do want to check out, I think we can just link it in the show notes. But Jerry Norton made a full video breaking down that calculator, and that's pretty much what we're using to when we send out blanket offers. So those percentages.
Cool. Yeah. So that's all the questions and comments we had for this week. So thanks everybody for commenting and feeding back. We appreciate it. We always like to hear from people who listen to the pod, and keep it up. Let us know what else we can answer or cover in the podcast.
Yeah, awesome. And typically we like to wrap it up sharing with some books or education inspiration that we've had over the past week. So did you have anything you wanted to touch on?
I'm laughing because it's the he who may not be named. Yeah, maybe I'll leave that alone. There was something really good I listened to this week though that I liked on a podcast. Oh, it's one little bit from this podcast I'll share, and it's just talking about like Seth Godin and other people talk about shipping, like just putting stuff out there and not getting into analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And this was glad to happy was the little mini principle in this one, and it was like talking about how they were copywriting something and splitting hairs between which the better word was. Like, was it better to put glad in this space or was it better to put happy in this space? And the point of it is that it's not going to be like massively better no matter which word you put in, so just get it done, right? So I like that thought, and it's sort of a variation on done is better than perfect, right? Like get shit
Yeah.
done. So anyway, that's a takeaway from a podcast from a guy that Jasper and I both follow on the internet a lot. But yeah, I think that's all I've got for books and pods and stuff. I'll leave it there.
All right.
What do you
Well, yeah,
got? Got any books and pods?
yeah. I just finished the Psychology of Money, so I've talked about that in the last few shows. I won't jump into that, but that was a great book. I think it's my second or third time reading it, but I really like that one. And then I'll share, got an email this week from someone who won't be named, but I really liked it. And so talk about delegation
It's like
and
Voldemort.
yeah. But anyways, we really like their stuff, and so I'm just going to share it. I won't share their name though. But level one that she shared for delegation is investigation. So that means is like you hand something off to someone, and they're just supposed to find out something and get back to you, basically. So that could be creating reports on something, like coming up with a new marketing strategy, or putting together a spreadsheet, something like that. That's level one. Level two would be informed progress. And so that means they're going off and executing something, but they're keeping you in the loop on updates. So for example, maybe you hand off transactions to someone and maybe they're doing the actions for you, but every time they do an action, they're just updating you and they're like, hey, just sent the contract to attorney or just the buyer just wired the EMD, for example. So they're keeping you informed, but they're still executing on your behalf. Um, then level three is informed results. So that's just a step beyond using the same example. That would mean that they're completing the whole transaction and then you're not hearing from them until the deal is closed. So they're sending the contractor title. They're getting in contact with the buyer, making sure they send an EMD. They're following up, making sure we're on track to close. They're resolving title issues, all this stuff. And then the deal closes a few weeks later, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, just close this deal." Maybe they share any updates that are applicable to the deal, like we need to send a letter to the sellers. I don't know, but that's already done, and so they're informing you once they get results. And then level four is complete ownership, and that's when you hand off to someone and you're not checking in with them for at all. So, for example, like handing off the full process to a new acquisitions manager, for example, where you're training them, and then at some point you let them loose, and you're like, okay, you have complete ownership of this, and you have the ability to negotiate on my behalf, make offers, sign contracts, all that stuff. And they have complete ownership of that role at that point. So I really like that, just the way that it was breaking down and just kind of showing how you can progress people from level to level. And obviously level four is the best because that means that you're not checking in with those people. They're not even checking in with you. They're just taking ownership. They're going out there, they're getting the job done and hopefully improving the job and adding even on more ways for the team to improve in that role too. So anyways, I just want to share that with everyone because I thought that was really cool. So.
I love that. And I love watching team members progress into more ownership and feel empowered and contribute and do things that I might not even thought to do. That's really a wonderful dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, we'll wrap it up with that. I think this was a good episode. So again, if anyone wants any more help with comping or anything, feel free to shoot us either a message on social media or drop a comment here and we can touch on that in future episodes. And yeah, drop any other questions or feedback and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Yep. And all our contact info and stuff is in the description on the podcast. So if you're trying to find Jasper, his link tree is in there and I've got information in there too about how to reach me. So just check out the description.
Awesome.